Hello and welcome to I'll Knit If I Want To. I'm Andrea Maury of Andrea Renee Knits, and this is a little weekly podcast where I try my best to answer some of your questions. Today I am wearing the throw over. This is knit up in Magpie Fibers Nest and Spin Cycle Yarns Dream State. This is a pullover version of my first ever Rhinebeck sweater, the throwback. I called it the throw over, right? I think I said that right. Anyways, this sweater is super cozy and perfect for a day like today here in Maine. It is a very brusque November morning. Actually, when this goes live, it'll be a December morning. But right now we're still in November and it's a chilly one. So I'm gonna head out for my walk after this and I needed something to keep me extra warm. Yeah, let's just jump into some questions. So question number 1 is about sweater care. I've seen or heard a lot of knitters mention that they will steam block a sweater because they don't want it to grow too much, such as one that was knit with superwash yarn. My question is that garment now a dry clean only item? How do you wash it when it actually needs a wash? I don't know why I'm struggling with this, like at the end of the season. So, very good point. Personally, I would never only steam block a sweater because you are going to have to wash it at some point. Even if you layer your sweaters and you don't feel like they're getting dirty, you do eventually leave behind sweat and skin cells and things like that, which is fodder? Why am I saying fodder? Is food for little tiny baby moths. So I don't want to leave that in my sweaters. Sweaters take quite a bit of time to knit. They take quite a bit of yarn to knit them. To me, they're an investment and I know that eventually I'm gonna have to wash it. So by steam blocking it to avoid that growth, you can't really do that forever with them. I suppose you could maybe try and get them dry cleaned. I've never done that, but I'm trying to think of back in the day. I haven't bought a sweater in many a year. I just cannot get myself to do it because I'm like, I can make it. But I do feel like they've had dry clean only tags in them. So maybe you could get them dry cleaned. I really don't know much about dry cleaning if I'm being honest. So personally, I'm gonna wash them myself and I wash mine fairly frequently. I wear my sweaters a lot and I will wash them after a few wears. Again, because then if I'm not gonna wear it for a little while, I don't wanna put that sweater away with the skin cells and stuff that just naturally, like from wearing them, are gonna be in our sweaters because I really don't wanna tempt the moth situation. So yeah, basically I would use steam blocking for maybe a hat or a shawl or a cowl, like a small accessory that I don't want to wet block for one reason or another. But generally speaking, I wet block everything because a lot of things eventually are going to need a wash. And I want to start off taking care of it how I will in the long run. That way I know, is this going to grow? How much has it grown? So I would rather anticipate the growth through swatching and knit it to the size and length I need it to, so that once I do wet block it, if it grows, it's grown to what I'm expecting, instead of just trying to do a steam block and then not being able to wet block it how I want to in the future. So yeah, I personally would always wet block a sweater. long story short. All right. I'm very excited for your spindle spinning challenge. What are your favorite fibers or fiber qualities for easy spindling? So, let me just open. By the way, this little gem, my friend Amy turned me on to, but I also saw Melody from Pacific Coaster Fibers posted one in her stories a while back, but I can't remember what Melody's was. I feel like it was different than this one. This one is actually a carrying case for like a flat iron to travel with. Okay, I'm gonna show this. Don't judge me. I had a spazzy moment and the whole point is to keep your spindles safe because you don't want to bend a hook on a drop spindle. This is overfilled. I know that it's overfilled, but it's all soft and cushy. It's fine. I just had a moment the other day where I was like, well, I want to bring down both of these spindles and projects, but this is kind of a little bit much, Andrea. Jeepers creepers. Okay, anyways, I'm opening this to show you. So for me personally, what I have found is if I am going to spin on a spindle, combed top, like painted braids, I prefer to use my drop spindle for that. I think it drafts out so nicely, and just works really, really well. I would say if you are just learning on the drop spindle, and I'm curious, maybe some people would disagree with me. When I was first learning, I was practicing on one of my spindles with some Corriedale, and it had a long staple length, like over 4 inches, and it actually was really challenging for me. So I would stick with more of like a medium length. I would go for maybe like 3-inch length fiber would be kind of nice. You don't want it too short that you feel like you have to put so much twist in there or you're losing, it's dropping and you're dropping your spindle. But I found that the long fiber I was just putting way too much twist in it way too quick. It was just harder for me to control. But I do like painted top to do, what would this be called? Short backward little draft that I'm doing. So anyways, I really like that for a drop spindle. If, in all honesty, I haven't tried a ton of fiber preps on my drop spindle because when I was learning this, I jumped right in with a kit I had gotten from Spun Right Round for Tour de Fleece. And it was all these, I'm not done. Okay, I know Tour de Fleece was a long time ago. I'm still not done, but someday I will be and I will show everyone. I'm still spinning away. Anyways, there were lots of little bumps of fiber. And so that's what I jumped in with and it worked really well for me. Support spindling is a whole different beast. And I have tried all the things to an extent. I have tried spinning from a bat. I have tried spinning from top. I have tried spinning from Rolex. I did a little bit from the fold. And my favorite by far is Rolex. I have found to be my sweet spot with spindle spinning. As you know, if you've been hanging around here or Instagram, I have found support spindle spinning really challenging. I finally feel like I got it. And now, oh my gosh, that's all I want to do. I'm having so much fun with it. But it was very tricky for me to learn. And once I started using this fiber prep, I feel like that's when it clicked. It just worked really well for me. One little hot tip, I do think something that helped me with learning the support spindle was that I had taken a long draw class, because that's basically how you're spinning, at least how I've been spinning on a support spindle, is doing a long draw method where I'm letting the twist go into my fiber supply and drafting out. You could do it from, again, I did try like the painted top and that was more, anyways, I'm kind of getting in the weeds with it, aren't I? Long story long, I'm just a little rambler today. I'm a rambling lady. But I like Rolex for support spindles and I like just painted top for my spindles. Comb top is what I should be saying. But play around and see what you like best, because it might be different for you. I did also enjoy spinning from a bat on my support spindles. I will say the bat I was spinning from was what I've processed myself, and I think there's still a decent amount of lanolin in there that was just really sticky. I also was using like the funkiest bit of the fleece I bought. I just made a quick bat out of to practice, and I knew I was just practicing. So here's a hot tip. Just because you are learning something new or quote unquote practicing, still use well prepped fiber. Because what I was doing is I was like, oh, I'm just practicing. So if this just turns into funky yarn I'm never gonna knit with or use, it's fine, I'm just practicing. But really what I did was I made it harder on myself, because the bit that I carded up still had some second cuts in it, some like little funky, the most VM of the whole fleece. I mean, it's a hot mess. So I'm constantly picking stuff out of it. There's big happening because of the second cuts that are still in there that I'm trying to pick out. Like, I just didn't really prepare it well. So then it becomes a battle. So you're learning something new, but now you're battling yourself because you're not using well-prepped fiber. Like, I think that when we're learning new things, we don't always want to invest a lot, whether it be time or money, because we don't know, like, will I be good at this? Will it be too hard? Will I take to it? I don't want to invest in it until I really know that I'm going to love it. And so we end up making it harder on ourselves because we're not using maybe the greatest tools or the greatest fibers or yarn, etc. Where a lot of times what makes it so lovely is when we can use a tool that works really well and makes it easier when it does the job it's supposed to do, and whether that be the fiber, the yarn, the needles, the spindle, whatever it may be. So anyways, it's just something that I wonder if other people have felt when they're learning something new. Is it's almost like we don't think we're worthy yet to use the good stuff, like something that we would actually want to spin. I think too, I'm just going to go on a little quick tangent here, but like for me too, I do this all the time, and I think that knitters do it all the time, where we have our precious shelf. So we buy that one skein of yarn that we found at a fiber festival or at our local yarn store, or what have you, that we've deemed it so special that it has to be used for the most perfect thing. And so it languishes on the shelf, because what will ever be perfect enough to use it for? And I definitely do that with fiber, because when it comes to fiber, there are a lot of one-offs. Like you literally can't get more or do it again. So you have to make it count. That really trips me up with spinning. It's like, I have got to release that. And it's something that like continuously I have to be like, Andrea, let it go, just use it. It's better to use it now and have it not be perfect than to never use it. Then what if moths get it? Like, you gotta use the precious things. Life's too short to not use them. So anyways, if you've ever had that issue of trying to save something till you're worthy of using it, you are worthy right now. So use it. That's my whole point. All right. So, and you did ask about favorite fibers. I really like a lot of different fibers and fiber blends. My all-time favorite fiber so far has been CVM, but I really love them all. I tend to love ones that are more plump and squishy and bloom a lot after spinning. So Rambouillet, Targhee, Polworth. I like things that get like squishy. All right, onwards and upwards. I'm working on the afterthought heel of a sock, and I missed a stitch when I was picking up stitches. I realized it and picked it up as I was knitting my first round, but now I have one too many stitches. I was supposed to have 32 on each needle, and I have 33 on each. What should I do? Can I just decrease it out on each side? You sure can. Will this affect the fit of the leg or foot of the sock? Nah. So here's one of the things I'm wondering, and this may not have been your issue, but what I find tricky is when you do an afterthought anything. Technically, if you're doing an afterthought anything, you're just going in and cutting a stitch and unraveling and like opening that knitting up and picking up stitches to knit like a pocket or a heel or what have you. But since then, we have learned ways to do that with a little less stress and guesswork and no cutting of anything by placing a lifeline or not a lifeline, waist stitches into our yarn. Oh my. By placing waist yarn into our knitting, where we can then just go to that waist yarn and pull it out, and now we have these exposed stitches ready to go. We know exactly where we want to put that heel or pocket, what have you, and you have your live stitches, you put your needles in, you knit the thing. But here's what I found. When you're doing this, the tricky thing is you are now knitting out from whatever it was to create this extra bit of fabric, again, to create a pocket or a heel. Those are like the two most common that I've played with. And because you are working in two different directions, because you're picking up the top and the bottom and working out, you are going to be guessing which stitches, like what all are true stitches, because you're going to be left with a half stitch. It's the same thing that happens with a provisional cast on, where you're now knitting in the opposite direction of the original work. So you have this little half stitch situation that happens when you're knitting all of a sudden in the other direction. You'll understand it when you do it. But what I found to eliminate that guesswork is I use lifelines with my waste yarn. So what I do is I knit up to the point where I'm gonna need to place my waste yarn for, let's say, the heel. And before I knit across those stitches, I run a lifeline through the stitches that I'm gonna be using to place my heel. So I put that lifeline in, then I knit across the stitches with my waste yarn. Then you slide those stitches back to where they were and you knit across them again, but now with your working yarn. And now you place another lifeline. So what you've done is once you go back and you remove the waste yarn, all your stitches are ready for you on your two lifelines. So you just follow those lifelines with your needles and everything's back to where it should be. It also takes away the fear of losing any of those stitches as you remove the waste yarn, because they're safe on your lifelines. I actually recorded a tutorial for it, so I'll include that in the description below if you are ever doing this. Again, it works great for pockets and heels. And it just takes the guesswork out. So part of me wonders if when you are picking up your afterthought heel, if you didn't use that method with the lifelines, you might have missed a stitch because it's this weird half stitch. It's so hard to know. It feels like you're picking up something you shouldn't. So when your lifeline's in there, you know it's right. So anyways, I'll include that video just in case. But back to your question, I absolutely would just go ahead and decrease those out. You can then continue with your heel. Worst comes to worst, if you're like, I don't like how this looks, or it's funky in some way, that's kind of the beauty of an afterthought heel, is you can just unravel it and put your needles back in and try it again, because it's not part of the foot or the ankle of the sock. One of the other pros to afterthought heels is a lot of us, if we're gonna wear a hole in our sock, it's in the heel. So when you do afterthought heels, you can just tear that heel out and knit yourself a new one without losing your whole sock to the little hole that's in your heel. So I really like an afterthought heel. Anyways, there you go. I hope that works out for you. And in general, our mistakes are kind of easy to hide in knitting when it's an extra stitch or one short. Like if you find out you've goofed your stitch count a little bit at some point in your project, you can try just adding in a stitch or decreasing one out. And most likely, you're probably not even gonna ever notice once the whole thing is done. So I think it's a nice thing to try before you're like, oh shoot, I gotta tear back or start over or what have you. All right, I don't know about y'all and where you live, but in the colder months, it gets so dry. I'm like, my skin is so dry, I'm so dehydrated. So, 1 second, please. As I'm talking, I can just feel my throat getting drier and drier. Okay. Where am I? I am looking for a joy project. We have had 2 family members hospitalized within days of each other, and life has been chaotic and sad recently. I am so sorry. That's very stressful. I'm looking for a project that I can pick up at the end of a long day and work on under the tree lights in December, which will bring me joy. I'd love some suggestions. So I thought this would be such a great one for all of us to throw in here. Sorry, for a minute I'm like, I don't think we've done this before. I think I've had, anyways, I digress. So I thought this would be a fun one for all of us to throw in our favorite pattern suggestions. I feel like we have done, somebody else was looking for a feel-good project. Anyways, if we're doing it again, great. Let's go ahead and help this knitter find some projects to bring them joy. So my go-tos are generally DRK Everyday Socks and the Harlow hat pattern. Socks might not be your thing, and brioche might not be your thing. So if you want something more relaxing, I would probably recommend my DRK Everyday Cowl. It comes sized for the family, so it would make great gifts if you are a gift knitter. But it's just a pretty relaxing knit. It's one that I've knit like 6 or 7 of them at this point. So I will add these pattern links in here for you. So there we go. All right. But if anyone else has their go-to relaxing patterns, I actually have a few I've been working on that I'm hoping will be the kind of pattern you can pick up again and again. I actually just finished one this week that I'm hoping will be pretty much gaugeless so that you can use any yarn within reason between like fingering and worsted weight, and that it'll still work. So that's my hope. I'm on my second sample now. But in the meantime, those are probably my 3 most relaxing knits that I like to turn to again and again, but hopefully other people will throw in what knits they return to that just bring them joy and fill them up. And I hope that your family members recover and get back to a place of health very, very soon. All right, last question. So this was actually from during the Tessellated Sock Knit Along, and they're asking, do you have any tips for yarn management with all 3 colors? I'm doing 2 socks at a time on Magic Loop, and I know you usually do 1 at a time, but was just wondering if you have any tricks up your sleeve to make this a little easier. So I saw a few of you doing this in the knit along, doing 2 at a time, and I was so amazed at your juggling act, because I am a 1 at a time sock knitter, again, because a lot of times when I knit socks, I am doing it on the move, so I'm not going to fiddle around with 2 at a time. But I know that some of you, it is the way you finish socks, like you love doing them 2 at a time. But this pattern is a little tricky with the yarn management, because you're using 3 colors at a time, and you have to leave 1 color on one edge, and then it's just like a little bit, you do have to manage your colors. So what I do, and I feel like for 2 at a time, what I would probably do is I would probably wind up 2 balls of yarn so that you've got it on each side of you. But yeah, it's gonna slow you down at the end of the day, I think. So anyways, what I like to do is I like to keep 2 yarn balls on one side and 1 on the other. And the trick is to rotate back and forth instead of twisting in a spiral as you're working. And I really do go slowly. So I'm actually finishing up knitting a very special cardigan with a very similar stitch pattern to what we're talking about, and I'm on the sleeve, and so I'm actually kind of doing this right now but with a sleeve instead of a sock. And I really do, at the end of the round, I physically move and I'm always making sure every round that nothing is starting to twist around each other. The rotation helps a lot because the yarns don't want to just spiral around, but especially if you're using the recommended yarns or ones that are like it, like if you're using a fuzzy yarn in there, it likes to grab onto things, and it's a little bit like floaty. So for me, I would rather slow down and take the time to keep everything separate as I go than have to untangle. So I basically kind of hold it up after the end of the round. When I'm using the contrast colors and I have to do 2 rounds in a row, I just simply like move my cake under the other 2 quick and keep going. But keeping them separated by having 2 on one side and 1 on the other helps me do that. And I just kind of juggle them around. But you are brave, very brave for doing 2 at a time, because that's, whew, my goodness. And this person also mentioned how lovely it was to be able to support Sisters United. So I just wanted to share because I was so excited. I found out from Candace, who started Sisters United, which is a nonprofit, that between the Totally Tessellated Sock patterns and bundles and our Sisters United bundle, which was a collaboration with Thread and Maple, Farmer's Daughter Fiber, and myself, we were able to raise over $17,000 for Sisters United. So thank you so much to every single one of you who purchased a pattern, purchased a sock bundle, purchased a Sisters United bundle, donated directly, just shared. I mean, if you're not in the financial position to donate, it is so helpful to share links, Instagrams, to like those posts, to comment on those posts, because all of it helps with visibility so that anybody who is in the financial position to do so, to donate, can. So just thank you so much to everyone, whether you just liked a post or shared it or purchased a bundle. Being able to raise that money and help their goal for their nonprofit was so wonderful. So thank you so much for all of you who contributed in any way that you did so. It really means a lot. So I just wanted to share that because we found out yesterday and it was so exciting. All right, let me jump back here. So the Totally Tessellated Knit Along is over. That wrapped up on Monday, but we are still doing the Insta Friends Knit Along with the Traveler Shell. It's not too late to join that. That one goes on for a couple months. I have the info for that one below. And then we also have the spinning challenge. So if you are on my newsletter or my Instagram, you saw yesterday that during all this, we've had a few people, not everyone spins both ways. Some people are wheel spinners, some are spindle spinners. I thought I would always be a wheel spinner. Like, that was it. I didn't have an interest in spindles, which just makes me giggle so much now. Because I literally had one of my friends asked, oh, do you think you'll ever do spindle spinning? I was like, no, I'm just not interested. And literally the next week I was like, well, maybe I'm interested. So anyways, I can't even believe how much I love it. So I do think it's fun to dabble in both. But we do have some wheel spinners who are loving the idea of this 100-day challenge. If you aren't familiar, what we're talking about is my friend Amy had the great idea. We are all kind of practicing our support spindles. And she was like, I'm going to do 15 minutes a day for 100 days to get better at my support spindle. And I was like, oh my gosh, brilliant idea. I'm going to join you. And then our whole knitting group was like, me too. So anyways, long story short, we started this little challenge, but I've had a few wheel spinners be like, I don't have a spindle. I don't spindle spin. But I want to do the challenge too. And it got me looking over at my spinning wheel, which looked so sad and lonely with its languishing sweater spin that I have not worked on in a few weeks. So I decided, what if I do 15 minutes in the morning on my spindle and then 15 minutes in the evening at my wheel? And it's been so delightful. I'm completely re-motivated and excited to be spinning my sweater spin that I'm working on my wheel, and also enjoying continuing to practice my spindle spinning. There's only so much time in a day, and 15 minutes a day, twice a day feels doable for me. So anyways, I threw that out there yesterday. So everyone's welcome to join, no matter how you spin yarn. You're welcome to jump in on the challenge. And if you want to double dip like me, I even started a second hashtag that's just 15 a.m., 15 p.m. spinning challenge. Because I just thought this will get me doing all the spinning. Also, word of warning, as I'm looking at one of my supported spindles, I've been using a ceramic bowl as my support spindle bowl. And I think it's actually wearing down the points on my wooden tips of my support spindle. So maybe don't use a ceramic bowl as a support bowl. I think it's kind of, and maybe that's just what happens. The wooden tip, maybe they just kind of get worn in. Anyways, I think that's all. I don't think I have any show and tell this week. I've just been spindle spinning away, which I've been showing on Instagram and whatnot. Yeah, I think this is it. I am so grateful as always that you decided to spend some time with me today. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Feel free to ask a question through the link in the description box, and I hope to see you back here next week. Have a great weekend. I hope you get to maybe do some spinning or some knitting or whatever kind of making fills you up. And that's all I got. Bye.